Welcome to the Nonprofit Report, your update on nonprofit organizations, issues, and leaders, viewable on MOP&IM TV and YouTube. Today, I'm just so delighted to host the Hole in the Wall Gang, including Jimmy Canton, who is the CEO of the organization, and Hilary Axtmayer, Chief Program Officer. So thank you both for joining us. Hole in the Wall Gang, fabulous organization. I think before the show, we talked about the fact that my mom was involved in working with Paul Newman to recruit the first chief executive of the organization. This was, 30 years ago. Jimmy, you've been with the organization for such a long time. Talk about the Hole in the Wall Gang and talk about that arc of experience that you have in helping this organization serve so many children who live with serious illness.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Well, it is a privilege to be here. It is a privilege to work with my colleague, Hilary. And, Hole in the Wall is dedicated to provide a different kind of healing to seriously ill children and their family members. We do that physically at a campus that Paul Newman founded and dreamed up. We do it at a child's hospital bedside in 40 different hospitals between Boston and Washington, D.C. And we do it at children's homes and in local neighborhoods. So if a child may be declining in health, we're there to bring that camp magic and love right into their homes. This year, we will provide close to 50,000 healing experiences to children on site in the hospitals at their homes. And as you can imagine, it's just a remarkable privilege. It's been a privilege to be associated with Paul Newman. He was a man who had such high integrity, and he wanted so much to pay it forward and to use the good fortune he had in his life and use that to help those less fortunate who've been dealt some really tough, a very tough hand. And he was especially moved by children who may not be afforded a long life to make up for their bad luck. It is a place of incredible joy. It's a place of healing and of friendship. And I've been so lucky to be a part of it for 37 years.
And I can attest, after when my mom was doing that search, we would sit around the dinner table and we would talk about those interactions and the impetus there. It wasn't about Paul or somehow promoting himself or his own search for significance. He was really, as you say, trying to translate his good fortune into the good fortune of others. So, Hilary, how did you come into communication with the organization, and now you're chief program officer? How did that actually happen?
Yeah. Well, similarly to Jimmy, I started my journey with Hole in the Wall as a teenager and haven't been able to leave. It gets in your soul, and it's really inspired my entire professional career. So I started working at Hole in the Wall when I was 19. At that point, I was going to college to learn about American history. I had great aspirations to be a professor of American history. And I spent about 20 minutes at Hole in the Wall and realized that I wanted to spend my life doing this kind of work. So I went to school for social work and public health with always the objective to work in a space, ideally Hole in the Wall, which has worked out quite well for me, where I can help design programs for children with life-limiting challenges, and in particular psychosocial support programs. That's really was my background in terms of what I studied in my master's programs. So I was the camp director for a number of years, like Jimmy. Jimmy was the camp director as well. And now I have the great privilege of overseeing all of the programs that Jimmy outlined, and get to see firsthand the impact that our amazing staff full-time staff or seasonal staff. We have a huge army of incredible volunteers that make our work possible. And so they, all of our staff provide the programming. And the programming is vast and deep and creative. And it's the connection that is the most powerful, for sure. The connection that our staff have with our families, whether that be at camp or bedside, like Jimmy described, or in a camper's home. And we talk a lot about privilege. And it just is always, it's just such an incredible privilege for our staff, our counselors, our volunteers, to be able to share what people would describe, the most challenging parts of their life, the most, painful times of their life, and to share in that, and to partner with them, to walk with them in that path, and provide some healing. And as Jamie said, it really is a different kind of healing. Just this past weekend, at our site in Ashford, Connecticut, we just finished our second bereavement cohort program, which is a relatively new program that we've added to our programs in Ashford. Really inspired by our families. They are so connected to us, to our camp, and to our programs, that if they do lose their child to their serious illness, they say, well, we don't want to lose camp too. We're losing so much. And this connection that camp has provided is so important. So we, just a couple years ago, created these new really special bereavement programs, which really there's a huge lack of bereavement support for children, for families who have lost a child. And so we had a beautiful weekend, which wrapped up 3 weekends over the course of 18 months, where it's the same families that come to camp for these 3 weekends. Experience the magic of camp. We have grief specialists that we bring in, and it really is, what we have heard, is just incredibly impactful as part of their healing journey.
Let's talk a little bit about how do you create the cultural attributes within an organization like this that allow the organization to function both operationally and empathetically. Because you have to, Jimmy, have the organization be financially strong while you're providing these services, and culture is the binding factor, right? That's a tough row to hoe, but I suspect that you are constantly being educated on cultural attributes by the collection of families who themselves are also navigating their own journey, their own financial strength, while they're also providing care. How do you create a community that balances and includes these various aspects that are so important to your long-term success?
When I look back at our staff, first I would say that our founder left us some very important values that we continue to fall back on and share with our staff, whether they've been working for us for 30 years, staff and volunteers, whether they've been with us for 30 years or 6 months. That, our founder was entrepreneurial, and he wanted to go where the need was. And so from the very beginning of camp, we've never been content to rest on any successes, but to keep driving. As long as there were needs for these children and their families, then it was incumbent upon us to identify what the need was and how we could serve it.
And it's venturesome, right? I mean, yes. Going into new ideas.
Yeah. I mean, when we started when Paul imagined camp, it was a summer-only camp. We served 288 children that first summer. This year will be easily 20,000, but creating 50,000 experiences. So yeah, it was wanting to be responsive. So I'd say entrepreneurial is one. Humor and play. Our founder was all about that. That there is healing. Laughter is the best medicine, and there is healing in creating joy. We also understand that all of the children that we serve, all the families that we serve, have experienced trauma on some level. And so creating a space of safety and of joy is the best medicine that we can provide those families in response to the trauma that they have experienced or continue to experience.
There's also an egalitarian piece to this, which I think is so important. One of the things that I remember my mom talking about was this idea that the thing that we all have in common is who we are, is our humanity, are the essential experiences one has between when we come into the world and when we exit this world. That's really where the focus was going to be, and it wasn't going to be on individual circumstance, other than if our individual circumstance requires this kind of joy and community, the organization was going to dedicate itself to providing it. It's really important. I mean, how does this world function? How does this country function? We should be mutually supportive and just get back to our humanity, right? The humanity of every child. So let's talk a little bit about the range of activities. And I understand that you have your Connecticut facility, but you're also expanding. So let's talk a little bit about the footprint and the footprint to come of the organization and how you will serve your constituents. So, Jimmy, you want to kick us off in terms of just giving us a tour?
Sure. And Hilary will be able to fill in with much better detail. But we've had this campus for now 37 years. We're going into our 37th summer. We'll see several thousand children and family members on the site. We started a hospital outreach program when all of our beds were filled, and we knew that there were many more children who could come through our gates but would not have a bed to come and reside on site. We went into the hospitals. We started with 2 hospitals and one person splitting his time between 2 hospitals back in 2002. Today, we've got over 30 full-time specialists that are caring for children in 40 different hospital settings between Boston.
40 different hospitals.
Yes.
You're going around and you're bringing the joy into the hospital.
Right to their hospital bedside, taking over the activities of a playroom, launching camp-wide events where every major pediatric oncology center up and down the East Coast. And we have our family programming in fall and spring. We have our traditional summer program. We're going into the hospitals. We realized after we were in the hospitals that so many of our children who may be declining in health need that extra attention from camp. So we are into their homes and local neighborhoods. And the board has always charged us, what's the next bold vision? Where else can we be of most help? And so for many years, we served children from the Mid-Atlantic. Getting them all the way up to northeastern Connecticut was a long haul. So we did a medical needs assessment in the Mid-Atlantic, trying to determine if there was a place for camp, another residential site, a second campus that could serve children from the Mid-Atlantic. So from mid-New Jersey down to mid-Virginia, we did a medical needs assessment, and we found out that there were thousands of children that we could serve that didn't have access to anything similar to what Hole in the Wall was offering. So, be careful what you ask for because the universe responds. The board said, this sounds good. There's a need for us, clearly a need in the traditional populations that we served, cancer, sickle cell, other blood diseases, but there's also a profound need for children with ultra rare disease being treated by Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, Johns Hopkins, Nemours, Georgetown, Children's National. And so when we were committed to creating the second campus, we were approached by the Aspen Institute, who offered us the gift of their conference center. And they were no longer in that business. And they gifted us a remarkable site on the eastern shore of Maryland that will service all of those hospitals and thousands of additional children. So we couldn't be more thrilled.
That is just superb. And Hilary, how does this change or evolve your programs? Are you going to try and replicate the programs that you have up north in Connecticut, or are you going to actually create a different version of those programs so that you have a complementary back and forth between the two facilities?
I think we've already spoken about that culture piece. And I think it's a good space to talk about culture, the culture that has been handed down from us and really continued to be fostered and encouraged since Paul Newman all the way through. We want that to live on. And so that really is the driving force with our program growth in Maryland. So yes, we recognize there will be differences in our program up in Ashford, Connecticut. The look of our camp is Wild West. It's based off of Paul Newman and the Sundance, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. So we will not. It won't look the same. It's going to be a different look. We are on a beautiful piece of land, as Jimmy said, on the Chesapeake Bay, right there on the eastern shore. It is just gorgeous, pastoral with cows, these incredible Angus Y cows that are there on site. The river wraps around the site. So it's going to have a much different feel, but the culture and the community that is so important. And that has just helped thousands of people.
So less of an outlaw kind of theme.
It'll less of an outlaw feel, but that idea of mischief rising and fun is going to absolutely be there. So we're going to start with family programs for our camp in Maryland, as the buildings that we were gifted from the Aspen Institute are a number of them are going to allow us to be able to start programming soon, and so we are currently renovating 6 buildings that were there that need to look less like a conference center and more like a camp for children and their families. And so that is underway. This construction project is well underway. We're about almost halfway through our construction project. Will be done in November, which will then allow us to serve families starting just about a year from right now. And we've learned so much from our families in Ashford and from everything that we have done over the course of the past 37 years. And the idea of a family camp we hear this over and over again from our families. It is a child getting to go to camp and that independence. Nothing can replace that. That is wonderful and so important. But some of our kids can't actually ever have that opportunity to go to camp independently. And so the family camp really blends both of these together really, really well, and allows that child to feel that independence, but also come to camp with their families where the entire family can benefit from this power of camp. So we'll start with our family camps. Yeah.
How in the world do you keep this? Because you don't charge for these experiences.
Everything is free. Absolutely.
Everything is free. And you're also very well known for everybody being on a level playing field, everybody having the same experiences. Those exchanges are based in what the child has experienced, not the circumstances of the adults, right? How in the world do you do this? Because this is absorbing a huge amount of resource, right? Although each of your staff has not dedicated their own economic lives to their own self-optimization, right? Which is one of the wonderful things about being in the civil society arena. People still need to get paid. You still have a payroll to make. You have facilities. You have to hire vendors who build things and maintain things and so on and so forth. This is a complicated financial model that you have, Jimmy. How does this whole thing actually work? Or is this the kind of situation where Americans are coming together just to support each other in community? Is this the equivalent of a barn raising, but now for kids that have needs?
I think so, and I think that the mission is there's great stickiness to it. I mean, the mission is about bringing joy to the lives of children who have whose lives have been turned upside down and whose families are in crisis. So there is, I think, that same feeling of our founder to pay it forward. I mean, I look at our donors. We'll receive about 20,000 gifts a year to support our budget. So we'll raise anywhere from $15 to $20 million a year. And I'd say 40% of that support comes from individual gifts, 30% corporate, 15% foundational support, and 15% third-party events that want to do something special for us.
That's just so basically what you're saying is that there's energy out there to help others.
Yes.
What you have to do is you have to create this sense of connection, right? So you're not only creating communities amongst your children,
correct,
and community amongst their families. And Hilary, you were referring to the bereavement work that you're doing. So that's surviving way into the future, but you're also creating connection amongst a larger community who can help you continue your mission.
Yeah, the like-minded people, experienced people who, I think that the same joy that we try to bring the children, we try to bring to our donors and to our board and to our volunteers. And that's the consistency of brand, that there is healing and joy, and and connection and friendship. And whether you're a child or a family or a volunteer or a donor, everyone's lives can be enriched by Camp Touching It.
Could we talk a little bit about the greater civil society impact of sort of taking care of other people? Right? I mean, you're in Connecticut, you're in Maryland, but these needs are in every corner of the country and in every corner of the world. How do you advocate for that attitudinal shift that we should all manifest in our own personal lives, so that if we are in Arizona or New Mexico or in Kansas, if we're in Georgia or Louisiana, or if we're in Iowa, right? Our community has children like those who attend the Hole in the Wall gang. How do you interact with others in this same field?
Not enough. We don't do it enough. We're so hyper focused on expanding our reach, kind of as locally, and just building that out. But quite honestly, the growth of what came from Hole in the Wall was a following of camps around the country and around the world. And so we all belong today. There are 16 full member camps that have their own sites, all independent of one another. And we all belong to this community called Serious Fun Children's Network. And so there are other Serious Fun Children's Network camps throughout the US and overseas. So that's some way that we're trying to spread what was birthed in Connecticut around the world. And that's something that we're awfully proud of in Connecticut.
Hilary, do you share the lessons learned with your counterparts who are also doing programming all across these different?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a couple things on that. Yes, we have it's a wonderful sort of community of practice, sharing best practices with other program officers, other staff. There's opportunities for us to come together and learn from one another. So, having conferences and this, we have this bereavement program that we've, recently added. We were inspired by a camp in Ireland, Barrettstown, who had created a program like this. And now other camps in the United States are coming to us and saying, tell us more about this bereavement program. We're the first camp in the United States out of our serious fun camps to do this. So we're providing that information. And also to share the joys of it, the challenges of it, the hardships that come along with it, that's incredibly beneficial. And then also, Mark, I'll just say one thing, it's this culture, for our donors, this idea of philanthropy and the goodness. We talk about this, maybe it's a smaller scale than what you're referring to. However, I think it's worth mentioning that the message that we give to our kids at camp, through our camp story, through when we say goodbye on the last night of camp or our family weekends, it's around kindness. And we're in the business of kindness. We're in the business of creating joy. And we encourage our campers to continue to spread that, and they're so connected and they feel so heard, and so much less isolated than they feel on a regular, how they feel, that the power of camp gets in their soul. I mean, it truly does. And so we hear about this so often, that our campers or former counselors or former staff or whoever it may be, volunteers, they're doing such good in their communities because of that community that they learn, whether or not it may be a different nonprofit or maybe something other good they're doing in their community. But this idea of goodness and kindness and helping people was born for them at camp. And so it just so goes beyond the gates, and it goes beyond what we even imagine doing. And Paul Newman what an incredible man and the most inspiring leader. We are so fortunate. But I think the power of camp is even beyond what he imagined. The ripples, it just keeps going.
And I think he would be so pleased. Hilary Axtmayer, Chief Program Officer, and Jimmy Canton, Chief Executive Officer of the Hole in the Wall Gang, serving 20,000 people annually through 50,000 events, and the camp that you have in Connecticut, now the expansion of the facility in Maryland. I am just so excited to remain connected and informed on what you're doing and helping to get the word out. Thank you so much for sharing the information that you provided today, and also please thank your staff, your board, your funders, all the people who contribute, the parents and the kids who make the camp what it is, right? It's everybody as a collective. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.